So, okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
one more second. Basically what we did last time, there we go. Um, so let's do like a quick chazara. So the pattern that we identified is that in certain Aggadot, there seems to be a preference to finding an excuse to include themes from Tanakh in the stories of the Gemara, even in places where you wouldn't necessarily expect to find them.
Right. That
And
was
so
the theme that we started right after Pesach.
right,
Right.
exactly.
You gave a couple of examples. I was like masking to one or two, and then the other ones I'm like,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we tried to point out a couple just generic examples, and then the next year was to sort of classify them a little bit and say one type is biographies or profiles. So we compared the biography of Rebbi Meir to Shimshon, and we compared the biography of Rabbi Yochanan to Yosef, right?
Right.
And then last week we gave a couple more examples. The attempt last week was to sort of train everybody else to find the patterns for themselves. So I gave people the Gemara and then asked them what is the source that the Gemara is pulling from in Tanakh. Um,
Right.
some were a little bit better than others, but that's just to sort of train our ear to think about that when we're reading those Aggadot. What's the source? And then we started to talk through what I call pattern breakers. So, oh, welcome. We've got an audience.
Oh, nice.
So, we started to talk through last week. I was just mentioning to Charles, who is on Zoom, where we got up to last week. So, after tracing the biographies and looking at a couple of examples, then we started to do what I call pattern breakers. So this is stories in the Gemara that either invert, exceed, or break the expected pattern from Tanakh in a certain way. So if you have a character in Tanakh who eats 2 sandwiches, the character in the Gemara will eat 3 sandwiches, and that's a way of exceeding the pattern. There's ways of breaking the pattern. We talked about the story with Yehudis and the wife of Rebbi Akiva, where usually the pattern that we have in the Chumash is the woman tricks the man in order to bear children. Here, the woman who's named Yehudit, and the pattern that we're referencing is with Yehuda. So she tricks her husband into permitting her to sterilize herself so that she cannot have children. So that's a breaking of the pattern.
That's an inverting, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, the
Okay.
nomenclature here is all made up, but
I got you.
I see that as breaking the pattern. Then we have exceeding the pattern, and that was King Shapur, who asks Shmuel to tell him what he's going to dream. So we start with Yosef, who interprets the dream of the king. Then we move to Daniel, who tells him what he dreamt and then interprets the dream. And then we move to Shmuel, who goes one step further. He tells him what he's going to dream in the future, right? It didn't even happen yet. So that's
Yeah.
exceeding the pattern. And this week we'll get to a couple examples of inverting the pattern, and then I'm just going to give you a whole bunch more examples of this principle in other stories in the Gemara. And then hopefully next week we'll wrap up with my attempt at trying to find some meaning as to why this principle exists in the Aggadah. So the first example that I'd like to present to you of inverting the pattern comes from a very sad story in the Gemara about the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. And the story that is told is about the children of the Kohen Gadol. Are you familiar with the story where they tried
Yeah.
to pair the son and daughter of the Kohen Gadol together? Okay, so I'll read it briefly, and then we can talk about what it might be, what pattern it might be inverting. And Charles, if you read my notes and guess ahead, I will zap you with the zap.
Yeah. I'm not gonna say anything.
Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav Maisa the Beno Ubito Shel Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. So this is the son and daughter of Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, who's the Kohen Gadol. Shenishbu lishnei adonim, that they were captured by 2 masters. So the two masters got together in one place. The first one is bragging about how beautiful the male slave he got is. And the other one brags about the beauty of his female slave. So they say, Bo v'nasehem zelazeh. Let's marry the two of them together, and then we'll split the children because they're going to have such beautiful offspring. So they put them together in the room for the night. Each one sits in their own corner. So the first one says, how could I, who am of the lineage of the Kohanim Gedolim, I'm going to marry this Shivcha Vizoso Maris, and she says, Ani Kohanes Bas Kohanim Gedolim and Aseh Le'eved Ubachu Kol HaLayla, and they both cry the entire night, refusing to be with one another, even though they didn't know who the other one was. Kivan Shalom Mudashachar, when morning comes, Hikiru Zeh Zeh, each one recognizes the other, V'naflu Zeh Al Zeh, and then they both fall upon each other in crying until they pass away. And on this, Yirmiyahu has his lament: for these things I weep, my eyes run down with water. So that is the Gemara. Any takers on what story in Tanakh it might be an inversion of? This is fair game for you too, Charles.
I would not have come up with the answer, so I'm staying silent.
Okay. So I'll propose to you that this is an inversion of the story of Shir HaShirim. I'll give you a couple reasons to sort of support that, and then we can see if it sticks. So first of all, in Shir HaShirim, there is a very willing pairing versus here there is a forced pairing. The children in this story are of esteemed lineage. It seems that the children, just in the very Pashup shot reading of Shir HaShirim, the couple there are lower class. They're people who don't have a real place to be with each other. They go to gardens, they go to forests to have.
They get chased out by the city guard, which wouldn't happen if they were nobility.
Correct. In this story, obviously they refuse a nighttime liaison. In Shir HaShirim, they're embracing a nighttime liaison. In both cases, the beauty of the people in the story is described in extreme terms, but for different purposes. In Shir HaShirim, it's there to show how beautiful the story is, and here it makes the story all the more heart-wrenching and poignant because of the description. There we have it actually in both stories there's a discussion of marriage. Well, maybe a better way to say it here, the discussion is marrying them together, quote unquote, in order to have the children. There is no discussion of marriage. They're spending time with each other, and there's no discussion of let's get married and make this union sort of official. There is in Shir HaShirim a description between the lovers of describing each other as brother and sister. He refers to her as Achosi. She refers to him as my brother. That's done in an affectionate way. Here, obviously, it's very literal, and again, it intensifies either the beauty in one hand or the sadness in the other hand. So that is the case I'd like to make for Shir HaShirim being an inversion of the story, and I think that in doing that, in telling the story of the children of the Kohanim Gedolim and referencing gesturing towards Shir HaShirim, it makes it all the more poignant and heart-wrenching when you layer that on top of it, especially considering a lot of the symbolism in Shir HaShirim can be seen as the Jewish people and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whatever it is, it adds another layer of meaning to the story as a whole.
Yeah, sort of the stark contrast highlights the downfall, the carefree nature of Shir HaShirim versus the very forced and limited scope of the second story, the Gemara story.
Right. What do we think? Interesting? David's still unconvinced. He doesn't like it from start to finish. He doesn't like it. Okay, that's fair. The next one I'll offer you is a shorter version. This is another inversion of a pattern from the Chumash. The story that we'll have is a Mishnah in Tainus that says as follows: Amar Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, Lo hayu yomim tovim liYisrael. There were no greater days for the Jewish people k'chamisha asar ba'av u'k'yom HaKippurim, like the 15th of Av and like Yom HaKippurim. Shebehem benos Yerushalayim yosos b'klei lavan she'ulin. That on those days the Jewish girls would go out with borrowed clothing, shalul bayesh she'ein lo, so no one is embarrassed. Kol hakelim tu'unim tefillah, and all of the clothes that they would borrow need to be immersed. Ubenos Yerushalayim yotzos v'cholos b'kramim, and they would go out and they would dance in the orchards.
That's too broad, but that's
So that's a really interesting question. Did it happen also on Yom Kippur? There's actually an essay in that book right behind you. Let me go grab it. Where he argues that when we say that they went out, it's only referring back to Tu B'Av and not Yom Kippur. That when it says Shebehem benos Yerushalayim yotzos, it's going back on just Tu B'Av and not on Yom Kippur. I'll show it to you afterwards. The most simple reading of the mission is that it happened on both of those days. It's hard. That's kind of hard to imagine, the way we look at Yom Kippur today. But so they would go out into these kramim.
Did I ever tell you my question about Yom Kippur?
No.
So if you read in the Art Scroll Machzer, the thing of Yom Kippur, right?
Mm-hmm.
You read the whole Kohen service, and he goes into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and then he comes out, and everybody makes a big parade, and then it's a big meal, right? Like, so.
Oh, you froze.
The question that I had, and I'm not trying to be facetious. Sorry, do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Did he have it on Yom Kippur? Did he eat on Yom Kippur?
Right. So once he goes in and achieves atonement for the nation, is Yom Kippur over at that point because he got the Siman Bracha? Does everyone go home and then they just start eating and the day's over? Like even if the sun hasn't set.
So I'm pretty sure you can check the Rishonim on the Gemara there. I'm pretty sure that that's not the case, that they say explicitly what the Gemara does not say explicitly, which is that he has the meal after sun has set. Because the pasuk says "V'nisem es nafsho seichem," like that applies for the whole day, whether or not he made it out okay.
Right.
I believe that's.
I figured that, but I figured because it wasn't like so clear
explicit,
that maybe there's wiggle room.
Yeah, I hear you. So the girls go out. Mahayu omros. What do they say? Bachor sana inechu re'eh. Young man, raise your eyes and look. Ma ata borer lach. What do you choose? Don't just look for beauty. Look for family. Right there, each one makes the case for why they should be picked. So that is the Mishnah in Tainus. I'd like to juxtapose that with the story of we'll call them the Bnei Elohim, whether they were angels or giants or judges, whoever they were in Bereshis 6:1-4. This is sort of an inversion of that story, and I'll read that to you just very briefly. Vahi ki heichel adam larov al pnei adama. It was when there were a lot of people on the face of the earth. Ubanos yuladu lahem, and they had girls, daughters. Vayiru bnei Elohim es benot hadam, and these bnei Elohim, which we'll leave untranslated, they saw these benot hadam ki tovot heina, that they were good. Vayichu lahem nashim mikol asher bacharu, and they took women from whomever they chose. So here you have the same kind of concept. The girls tell the boys, what do you choose? Look at different things. Don't just look for yofi. Don't look for beauty. There's other things to look for. And over there, it's obviously a consensual thing that's going on. The girls are going out and it's shidduchim. Here, it's the exact opposite. You have the Bnei Elohim who have power, and they're exerting their power by taking these women, whether it's by force or coercion or whatever it is. They're exerting their power, and they're only looking for yofi, right? They're just looking to see that the girls are tovot, and they grab them. That's what precipitates the flood. You look perplexed. Okay, how would you read the story? Is it a positive story or a negative story?
I wouldn't read it positive or negative.
What happens next after that story is immediately you get God saying that lo tov, it's not good for the man is rak kol hayom, and it's time to wipe everybody out. Like that's the immediate follow up to those psukim or consequence.
It's a consequence, but I don't know if I would read it that way. There are, I'd look at it more carefully. I don't
Okay.
I see what you're trying to do, but I think it's a stretch.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Stephen, convinced? Unconvinced?
Okay.
You're good. Okay. Okay. Charles, what about you?
I like the second example. I think it's definitely I think it fits more than
The share.
the Shira example. I think that the parallels seem much closer to each other.
Okay.
I'm just gonna take the good one. I think that because the Lushan is similar and Gezerah Shava stuff, I like the second one better. I'm not saying the first one I don't like. I'm just saying like it's a little more on the nose for me, the second one.
Okay, let's try to run through a couple more examples. I won't pause for acknowledgement. We'll just see how many we can get in, and maybe we'll just overwhelm you with examples, and then you'll be forced to capitulate. Okay. The next example is the 24,000 students of Rebbi Akiva who travel with him, and he comes to town, and his wife Rachel comes to try and meet him and is rebuffed by the students. We're going to contrast that with Gehazi, who is the student of Elisha, and when the Isha Shunamite comes to try and tell him that her son has died, Gehazi rebuffs her and does not allow her to come close to Elisha until then. In both cases, you have the teacher telling the student or students, let her through. She's righteous. She's allowed to come and deliver what she needs, the message or what have you. So also be'esrim ba'arba alfin zuge talmidim. So you have Rebbi Akiva who comes with his 24,000 talmidim. Nafu kule alma la'apeh, and the whole world comes out to greet him. Ve'af he kamt lemifak la'apeh, and obviously his wife Rachel comes out to meet him as well. Amar la hahu rishia. So she has this wicked neighbor who's been, earlier in the story has been bothering her about, why is he not coming back and giving her all this trouble. So this wicked neighbor says, what are you doing? What are you bothering to go out to Rebbi Akiva? Amra le yodet tzadik nefesh behemto. He'll recognize me. The righteous man regards the life of his beast. He knows that I'm, all of this is because of my dedication to him, that I worked in order to make sure he has this opportunity to learn. Also, so she came to present herself and be seen by him. The rabbis are pushing her away. Like, what are you doing? Trying to pass through everybody and get to see the Rosh Yeshiva. Amr lahon. So he replies very famously, Hanichula, leave her alone, let her come through. Shali v'shalachem shalahu. What's mine and what's yours, meaning my students, all comes from her. That is the story of Rebbi Akiva, and we'll try to get through the Gehazi story as quickly as possible. We did Gehazi long time ago.
But it hasn't changed.
Hasn't changed. Vayayom. It was that very special day. Vayavor Elisha el Shunam Visham Isha Gedola. Elisha comes to Shunam, and there's this Isha Gedola, the Chazek lo, the Chazek bo leechol lechem, vahi midei avro yisur shama leechol lachem, and she's always taking care, feeding Elisha and obviously Gehazi, who comes with him whenever he comes through town. Vatomer Elisha hinena yadati ki isha Elohim kodeshu. I know that this man of God is holy. Over Aleinu Tamid, he's constantly stopping by. He's coming to have some food. Nasa na alias kir katana v'nasim lo. Sham mita v'shulcham v'kisei menorah, and these are all very symbolic things that she places for Elisha and his student. V'haya b'vo Aleinu yasur shama, and that way he's got like his own Airbnb whenever he wants to come to town. And just for the sake of time, I'll skip to the end of the story. So he promises her a son. She has the son. The son passes away. He goes out into the fields with his father, and he passes away. She doesn't tell anybody. She just goes to seek out Elisha. So now the Shunamite woman is coming to find Elisha. She goes to the man of God, El Har was when Elisha sees her. That's the Shunamis who's always taking care of us. Also, Rutzna Likrasa the Omer La Hashalom Lach, and go and run to her, greet her, and ask her, is the peace with you? Meaning, how are you doing? Hashalom Lach, Hashalom Li'isheich, Hashalom La Yelet. Vatomer Shalom. And she doesn't answer his question very directly. She just says, shalom, v'tavo el ish Elohim el hahar v'tachazek beraglav, and she throws herself at the feet of Elisha, and Gehazi is having none of it. Vayigash Gehazi lahadafa, and Gehazi comes forward to push her away. He grabs her. The Gemara talks very explicitly about how he grabbed her. Vayomer ish Elohim harpela, and then Elisha says, "Leave her alone." There's something that is embittering her soul, and God has hidden it from me. So again, you have that same sort of setup. Gehazi actually gives us a second opportunity for paralleling. There's an interesting Gemara that talks about, I'll read it to you. So this is there's a lot of Gemaras that talk about on that very day. There's the day was the day where Reb Gamliel was removed, and all the students were allowed into the base medrash, right? So on that day, all kinds of chidushim were offered up. So Tana Osa Hayom Sulku L'Shomer HaPesach, they removed the watchman of the doorway, and everyone, all the students were allowed to come in. Shahaya Reb Gamliel Machriz Vomer Reb Gamliel had made a decree. Kol Talmud Shein Tochel Kibaro, any student whose external doesn't match their internal, meaning they're not through and through righteous. Lo Yikanis LeBeis HaMedrash. I don't want them in the base medrash, so we're going to stick a guard at the door, and everyone is going to have like a chesed test to make sure that they're legit. Ahu Yoma Itosvu Kama Sapsole, and that day they had to add in a whole bunch of benches because so many people came to learn in yeshiva. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Pligiba Abba Yosef Ben Dostoy Rabbanan Chad Amar Itosvu Arba Mea Sapsole V'Chad Amar Sheva Mea Sapsole. Either is 400 benches or 300, 700 benches, whatever it is. A massive amount of people joined in the learning once they removed the person who's stopping everybody from coming in. V'Yomar B'nei Nevim El Elisha. So this is now a pasuk in Malachim after Elisha got rid of Gehazi. So now the Talmidim say to Elisha, there's not enough room for us to sit around you and learn. Remember, Elisha is like the Navi Rebbe. He's teaching everybody how to become a Navi, and that's why they're called the Bnei HaNeviim. After he cast Gehazi out, suddenly there's no room for all the Bnei HaNeviim to come and studied by Elisha. So the Gemara explains why that is. There's one opinion in the Gemara that Gehazi was the doorkeeper. Gehazi would stop the people from coming in to learn by Elisha. There's no room for us anymore. Why is there no room? Because the doorkeeper is gone. Until Gehazi was removed, there was plenty of room because Gehazi was keeping everybody out. So just like by Reb Gamliel, there's this sense of you remove one person and suddenly there are more Talmidim coming in. It's also very interesting that Reb Gamliel's, the thing he was makbid on is that the student should be, his external should be like his internal. And that's exactly the problem that Gehazi had. He appeared very externally righteous, but he was obviously, as his actual character traits showed, he was flawed. The next one, I will sort of just speak out because I think it's very, very long. The two, yeah.
You're the one that you just spoke out. Okay, what point are you trying to generate from there?
The idea that there is the reference there is to removing somebody, and therefore there being not enough room for all the students because so many people are trying to now come and learn now that the gatekeeper has been removed.
So the first Aggadah and the Navi that you were talking about, the Shulamis woman and the Aggadah.
Two separate
okay.
stories.
Well, what were you trying to elucidate from the first one?
So the first one, the comparison was a woman who is trying to get past the students in order to speak to the Rebbe or to Elisha. The students prevent her, and then the teacher says, "No, let her through," because she's right in approach. Yes,
it's parallels. It's no longer
different.
No, right. No, these are right. We're back to parallels. Sorry, I should have been. No, thank you. Should have been more clear. We finished the pattern breakers, and now we're just going to go through a bunch of parallel examples. So far, so good.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one we'll do actually a couple and try to keep them short. The two stories I'd like to contrast are the story of Dovid HaMelech bringing back the Aron. So if you remember, the Aron was captured by the Plishtim, and then it was sent back, and it got diverted to the home of why am I blanking? Uzzah. And then Dovid made a whole parade to bring the Aron back, and that's where we had parrots Uzzah, and Uzzah tried to grab. Okay, so that whole description, which I can read for you inside, or you can take my word. Maybe I'll just I'll read a couple just highlighted sections. Dovid makes this into like a literal parade. So there's dancing, there's music, there's a whole accompaniment of people bringing the Aron back. Right, when he gets there, his Michal, looks out the window and sees him turning cartwheels, and his toga's flying up, and she's not very happy with that. The pasuk says that these musical instruments are playing until they come to Yerushalayim. I'm sorry, I'm reading. I'm already reading the parallel. So I'd like to contrast this with the only other place that I know of in Tanach, in Shas, where you have a parade. Any takers on a mitzvah-oriented parade? Bikkurim, excellent. Yes, in the midst of Bikkurim, you have the same idea. You have people are all traveling to Yerushalayim in order to fulfill a mitzvah. There is musical accompaniment, which we have here in the Mishnah Bikkurim. Hechalil makel lifnehem ad shemagiam karvu Yerushalayim. You have the instruments are playing until they come to Yerushalayim. You also have an emphasis. The part of the problem that Dovid had in bringing the Aron in the beginning was, how was it carried?
By men.
So it should have been carried by men. It was carried by a wagon, and the wagon hit a bump, and Uzzah tried to grab it. Right, and dies. And the second time, Dovid puts it on everyone's shoulders, because the pasuk actually says in the Torah, "Baketef Yisol," that you're supposed to carry it on the shoulder. How do you carry the Bikkurim? So the pasuk says, "Notel hasal al seifo." You have to take the basket on your shoulder. Higil azara v'dibra levim b'shira, and now the Levim are singing shira, right? So you have all the same elements, the pomp and circumstance, the whole parade. Is a repetition of the parade that Dovid conducted to bring the Aron to Yerushalayim. Okay, I'm gonna skip the Buria one because I think that's I'm a little dodgy about that one. Bava ben Buta and Yoshiahu. So
which story was the parallel for the Bruria one?
Gan Eden.
Oh, okay.
So Bava ben Buta and Yoshiahu are both killed by being pierced with 300 spears. They were both righteous, innocent people who were establishers of the Masorah after it had almost been extinguished, and they were both killed with the 300 spears for defying a non-Jewish king. You can see the Gemara in Sanhedrin and Yerushalmi Kedushin for the story of Bava ben Buta, and the story of Yoshiahu is in Divrei Hayamim. Let's try to run through and see if we can get the last. I think there's two more. Maybe there's more than two more. Okay, we'll try to get as many. I'll do the short ones and then we'll save.
I'm not in a hurry. I want to hear them all.
Okay.
I'm looking around to see if I have the Gilguli Neshamot because I want to see if they make that connection.
Okay. The next one is a Gemara Menachos. This is also very long. I guess we'll save it. We'll do it actually inside next week. Let's skip that. Okay, here's two more. Rebbi Akiva bar Ashi have a rogil kol eden to have a nafel la'ape have a omar harachman yatzilenu miyetzer hara. So Rebbi Akiva bar Ashi, whenever he would say tachnun, he would add in an extra tefillah, and he would say, "Please, Harachman Hashem, please save me from that yetzer hara, the yetzer hara of a taiva for women." Yom echad shamte debitu. So one day his wife hears this. Amra, she says, "Michte ha kamishnin de parish le minoi." My time ka hachi. It's been many years since we've been together and been intimate. So why is he offering up this tefillah? So Yom Echad, listen to what she does. Yom Echad hava kagares begin say. There's one day where he's learning in the garden. Kashita nafshe. So she dresses herself up to look like to look differently. Chala v'tanya kame. She goes and passes by him while he's learning. Amra la manat. He doesn't even recognize her. That's how dolled up she is. He says, "Who are you?" Amra ana charuta tahadre miyomaya. She says, "I am the famous prostitute Haruta, and I've just come to town. You're in luck." Tava. So he propositions her. Amra le, she says to him, I see nihile lahach romana deresh tzutzisa. Grab that pomegranate, right? So what payment do you want? I want the pomegranate that's at the top of that tree. So go grab it for me. Shavar also ase nihile. So he bounds up and grabs the pomegranate from the tree and gives it to her, and they are together. He also says, so now he comes home, and she very quickly, like Superman, she changes and shows up back in the house, and she's already like cooking dinner as he walks in. He also shagra devisu tanura. So she's got the oven already up and cooking as he walks in. So he goes and basically wants to sit in the oven to punish himself for what he's done. Amra le my high. So she asks him, feigning ignorance, what are you doing? Amra la hachi v'hachi have Maisa. This is what happened, and he spills the beans. He tells her the whole story, and she says, "You're in luck." Amra le anahave. She says, "That was me." Lo ashkachba. He refuses to believe her ad the yohiv le simone, and he doesn't believe her until she gives him the signs. She tells him the simanim that prove that it was actually her. Amar la ana mial isuri kavne. He says, nevertheless, my intent was to commit an isur. And therefore he was distressed and fasted basically until the day of his death. So here, again, I think this is very reminiscent of the Yehuda and Tamar story. You have the fake prostitute, you have giving over of the simanim, elements of embarrassment. I think there's a lot that connects these two stories. Okay, the next one is even more risque, so we'll have a warning for mature audiences only. So this is a Gemara in Yevamos, which is hard to understand just in terms of halacha and pshat, but we'll read it anyway. The Gemara there is discussing whether or not a woman can become pregnant from her first bia, from the first time she's intimate with a man. So the Gemara says, of course she can, because Tamar was able to get pregnant from Yehuda. Tamar bebia rishona I abra. Tamar became pregnant from her the first time she was with Yehuda. Amar le. So the Tana answers back. Tamar be'etzba ma'aka. Tamar essentially removed her basulim like by herself with her finger. So that's the kasha, right? So I'll show Charles that I asked the kasha already. Yes, that is the kasha. How could you say that she wasn't right? So there's a question: did they have regular bia or bia shelo kedarka, and maybe she still had her basulim? It seems pretty clear that at least at least Onan had bia, even if he didn't have bia to completion. But the Rishonim talk about had bia shelo kedarka because he didn't want to impregnate her. But Onan, it seems like should have removed her basulim. But anyway, the Gemara says what it says. Tamar be'etzma Tamar removed her own basulim. The Amar Rebbi Yitzchak. This is the okay. Rebbi Yitzchak says as follows: Kol me'uchos shel beis Rebbi. All of the girls in the house, meaning of the family of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, that they perform this same act, and they're called Tamar Shaman. They're referred to as Tamar even as a nickname. V'lama nikra Shman Tamar. Why are they called Tamar? Al shem Tamar shemaka be'etzma, because just like Tamar removed her own basulim, these girls also removed their own basulim. V'ha have the erv onan. What about erv onan? Erv onan shimshu shelo kedarkan. That's what I just mentioned to you before, that Aaron Onan had bia shelo kedarka. But the idea here is pairing the daughters of Rebbi with Tamar in terms of how they both removed their basulim. So the other obvious question is, why do the daughters of the house of Rebbi remove their basulim? The answer is in order to make it quicker and easier to bear children.
So why do they get called Tamar? Is that a
That's a
pejorative, or is it a
Tamar is the father of Malchus based Dovid. It's a compliment. Okay, so the last one for this evening, and then maybe we'll go back and do one or two.
But doesn't it say that if a guy in the Torah, if a guy is with a girl and he doesn't find the signs, then he can have her basically taken out?
That's what this whole Gemara is talking about, whether or not you can apply that if you have reason to suspect that she removed, I think it's called auto digital defloration.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm trying to use a medical term for the doctor.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've been exploring thematic parallels. What I'd like to point out is one textual parallel that I think, at least for me, was very striking. So in Sefer Yechezkel, he does, at least in the first few chapters of the book, he does very symbolic acts. You have things where he's laying on one side. He's doing these things to experience the pain and illustrate the pain that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants people to understand, that the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash is coming and what that involves. In chapter 4, he is told to lie on the side of his body for a specific number of days. And I don't even think I had the psukim. We should read the psukim inside. Let me see if I can get it really fast. Then I'll see if you guys can get the parallel before me. We are looking for this. Okay. So God says to Yechezkel, Shachev al tzidcha hesmali v'samta es avon beis Yisrael alav mispar hayamim asher tishkav alav tisaz avonam. Lie on your left side, bear the punishment of the house of Israel for as many days as you lie on your side. That's how long they're going to be punished for. Ve'ani nasati lecha eshnei avonam lemispar yamim shloshes meos v'tishim yom v'nasata avon beis Yisrael. And then God tells him for how many days he has to lie on his side. 390 days corresponds to the number of years. V'kalisas ela, excuse me, v'shachavta al tzidcha hayimini shenis v'nasata es avon beis Yehuda arba'im yom lashana nasativ lach. And there you get the same language yom lashana that we have by the Meraglim. So now he flips onto the other side for 40 days. V'amatzor Yushalayim tachim panecha uzracha chasufa the nibesa aleha, and bear your arm and set your face towards Yushalayim, and prophesies against Yushalayim. V'hinena sati alecha abotim v'lota feich mitzidcha el tzidcha an kaloscha yemei mitzurecha, and you have to like tie yourself up, bind yourself up so that you can't turn from side to side all the days that you're lying there, to connote what a siege is going to be like, that they're going to be locked in. Kach lecha chitim u'sa'arim u'pol v'adashim v'dochan u'kusmim v'nasata osam b'kli echad v'asisa osam l'chal l'lechem mispar yamim asher ata shochev al tzidcha shloshim yos v'tishim yom tochlenu. You have to eat barley, beans, lentil, millet, and emmer for these 390 days. Machalcha asher tochlu b'mishkal esrim shekel liyom me'es ad es tochlenu. And the food that you should eat has to be weighed out. You have to have 20 shekels a day. This is the food that you should eat in the space of a day. Umayim b'mashur tishteh, and you should drink water that is measured out. Shishis hahin me'es ad es tishteh, a sixth of a hin. That's as much water as you're allowed to have. This is a very they've done these measurements, very small amount, and then you have to eat a cake of barley. And we're not even going to get into the cake of barley. Okay, so the parallel that I'd like to draw is just really from the language, and that is to the Mishnah in Perkei Avos. So the 6th chapter of Perkei Avos is not Mishnaic, it's a brisa, but it's still from the times of the Tanaim, and it's a very famous Mishnah. Kachi darka shel Torah. This is the way of Torah. Pas b'melech tochal. you have to eat bread with salt, umayim b'meshura tishta, and a measured amount of water is what you should drink, ve'al haaretz tishon, and you should lie on the ground, v'chayetzar tichya, and lead a life of privation. So you get both the exact same thing that Yechezkel was told to do is what we're told to do as Darka Shel Torah. I think that I don't want to draw any more parallels between them conceptually, but just the language of Umayim b'meshura tishta especially is an exact copy of the language from Yechezkel, but the concept that is illustrated in the Mishnah is, to me, taken almost explicitly from those psukim in Yechezkel chapter 4. And with that, we will conclude. Yeah, sure.
Shakar. Good stuff.